Hi folks, welcome back to the Grand Auld History Pod on Celtic Fanzine TV and on audio on the Celtic Soul podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and feel free to leave a comment if you like what you hear or if you don't like what you hear. We welcome all comments as long as they're not rude, racist or sectarian. And once again folks, please hit the subscribe and follow button if you're listening on the audio on Celtic Soul podcast, and that's available across all platforms: Spotify, Acast, Apple, whatever your preferred platform is. Please give us a follow. And all the podcasts and our video content is still available on CelticFanzine.com. And I'm joined this week on the Grand Auld History Pod by writer and teacher Paddy McMenamin. Paddy penned a long read for the latest issue of More Than 90 Minutes, issue 117, which comes out later in the week. And his piece was on Celtic in Europe. And that's why I've asked you, Paddy, along to the Grand Auld history, because you have a good history yourself following Celtic in Europe. You know a lot about Celtic in Europe. And I suppose ahead of Thursday's game against Bayer Leverkusen, which I know you'll be attending, and a welcome return for you to paradise. So, Paddy, let's just kick off with how you kicked off the article in the latest More Than 90 Minutes. The first paragraph, you kick off with Ajax at home in Martin O'Neill's first big season in Europe after we'd done the treble. Now, back then, we had top managers and top players coming up from the English Premiership to Scotland. Not so much now, Paddy, but some magnificent adventures under Martin O'Neill with the likes of Larsson, Thompson, Hartson and Sutton, scoring some wonderful goals. So take us back to that time, Paddy.
Hi, Andy. The 2001, I suppose, we went through 2 decades. Since we played Real Madrid in the quarter-final in 1980 and went out in Ireland 3-2, the next 20 years were desperate, and it was first-round exits more or less every year, just when I thought about penning the article, you were talking about it was your 20th anniversary of the fanzine, and it brought us back to 2001, and Martin O'Neill had arrived, and we'd got a league title and qualified, or on the verge of qualifying for the Champions League now, which was the Holy Grail. We'd watched for 10 years, and the Champions League music coming on and Zadok the Priest, and watching the best of Europe, the good and the great, and we weren't part of it, and then we went to Ajax that night, and I'm watching on TV, thinking maybe this is going to, we probably won't get through this, but Bobby Petta, he played the game of his life, and we romped home 3-1, and it looked, you just felt, God, we're in the Champions League, but what Celtic are like, and we come back to the home game, and I was still living in Donegal at the time, and me and a friend, we went over on the Mad Supporters bus, leaving at 4 a.m. from Letterkenny, and I think there might have been 7 buses travelling at that time, like it was incredible. And you're arriving in Glasgow at lunchtime and spending the day, and then into the match, and you just felt, this is it. We maybe beat them 2-0 at home, but of course, being Celtic, and they tore up the script, and Ajax scored after 10 minutes and was spent the next 80 minutes, and I don't bite my fingernails, but I was tempted that night, and was up on the top of the North Stand, and nerve-wracking knowing if they had a score in, God knows what would have happened in that. But as we get into the last 10 minutes, I just, you just felt this surge of energy around the stadium, and it was a bit like the stopping the 10 in a row, and the North Stand was rocking, and it was just a crescendo of noise as we played out the few minutes, and the whistle went, and we realised we were in the Champions League for the first time, and it was an amazing experience, that we'd made it into this was only getting into the group stages, but I mean, it was Celtic's first time, and it was just brilliant.
Yeah, and it was the chance, Paddy, of 3 big nights in Celtic Park with the elite of Europe, and also 3 opportunities for the fans to get into Europe and enjoy themselves abroad. But I was at the Betis game, Paddy, a couple of weeks ago, and back in Seville for the first time since 2003, which was probably, I suppose, the pinnacle of Europe under Martin O'Neill. My wildest dreams during the 90s, I never thought we'd see Celtic in the European final, but the locals, you get into a taxi with a Celtic top on, your T-shirt with the crest on, the locals are talking Celtic. Even if their English is poor, you go to bars, Celtic to Glasgow. They haven't forgotten about us. And even younger ones, I was talking to a young fan, perfect English, and she was saying that it's the stuff of legend when Celtic came to Seville. Now, it ended in heartbreak, but what a magnificent journey that season as well, as that first season in the Champions League. Because in the Champions League that year as well, of course, we had a visit to Valencia and that fabulous old stadium, crumbling old stadium. So, yeah, under O'Neill, it was just an amazing journey, Paddy. And I think back as well to going to the old Olympic Stadium in Munich and losing through a goalkeeping error. I think it was Magnus Hedman after Thompson had scored. So, yeah, there's been so many wonderful occasions in Europe. But Seville was probably the one that we remember fondly for the build-up and probably for the heartbreak, because I've never watched a game by him.
Yeah, I have it on an old VHS somewhere, but Seville was the pinnacle. For whatever reason, I didn't get over to Blackburn or the Liverpool game. But after they beat Liverpool, or maybe before it, or maybe after, we were over at Stuttgart, and I just took a notion that they might get to the final and tried for tickets. And if you remember, there was UEFA did a ballot, was it that year, or first come first? I can't remember, but you went on early to apply for them, and I was at work and got my boss and I gave him the email or whatever, and he tried all day from it, and me and him were fairly friendly, and he came out and he says that must be the wrong web address or whatever. And it turned out that because so many Celtic fans were looking for tickets, the website crashed. And it opened up again at 6 a.m. the next morning. And I know a guy up in Donegal, he was a Liverpool guy, and he got tickets the next morning. There was a chance of getting tickets, but I missed them. And we went there with no tickets and spent the week in the Algarve with my grandson and Mary, and drove up to Seville. And sure, it was an amazing experience, And despite the result, we had our car parked at the stadium, and Mary, there was a few aperitives, So she says, we're just sleep in the car, you can't drive, and she was tired. And so we were sitting in the car, and I presume I've told, but I just said I'm going to stroll over to the stadium, and I mean, I never would wear a top, I just don't, but I did that night, one of the old white tops, and I just strolled in through a door, and I kept walking, and ended up in this lounge bar, whatever. And there at the bar was Jack McGinn and Brian Wilson, the MP, and the barman says to me, "You like a drink?" And he gave me a prosecco or something, and there was a manager came along and I think she said like to me, what are you doing in here? It was where all the officials, all the top UEFA guys had their dinner before the match. But I just and the Prosecco was flowing, and they were taking down a big poster, a big 6-foot poster of the final. And Brian Wilson says, "What are you doing?" She says, she gave him one, and she gave me the other one, which I have somewhere. You know, it was a nice memento. You know. But
so when we were flooding out of the stadium, you were going in.
I'd never done anything like it in my life, you know, and I just strolled about, you know, and again the barman was great, and an older barman, and he brought me around and he gave me I have a bag of stuff like programs and the president's address at the dinner and a load of stuff, and he filled a bag of stuff for me. And I pulled off the top as I was leaving, and I said, "Are you a young boy?" And I said, "Give him the top." And as I was walking around, a guy came along in a golf buggy, and it turned out he was a Dutch TV guy. And he said, "Jump in, I'll give you." And he drove me over to the car. You know, it was amazing. And with a few hours sleep, and drove down to Algarve in the morning. You know.
Yeah, there was so many wonderful memories of that O'Neill era in Europe. Even though there was nothing won, Liverpool away was a fantastic result. And
Liverpool was sorry for Liverpool. I mean, was one of the best nights ever, and I organised. You know what it's like in Ireland, and you know they're all full of the nonsense about the English Premier. So it would maybe have been everybody would be would like Celtic, but they'd all support Man United and Liverpool and all that nonsense. So there were 6 Liverpool guys and me and another Celtic guy, and we arranged to go to a pub in Letterkenny to watch the match, and with a wee bet on and all, you know. And of course they were expecting this was going to be easy, and of course Big Hartson, I'm sure it blew the roof of the place, you know, and you can imagine, you know. Just didn't talk for a while, but it was good fun, you know.
Yeah, Paddy, I was lucky enough to be in the stadium that night in the centenary stand with the Liverpool fans, and when the final whistle went, I wasn't alone. There was a lot of Celtic fans. There was a lot of Celtic fans in, and I always remember Jerry Brady getting put out of the when we scored. He jumped up, and Jerry from Nave Park lives in Scotland now, a very famous Celtic fan from Dublin. And they were putting Jerry out, and I just said to Jerry, "Don't even look at me. Don't even look at me when you get," because I was sitting quiet. I know. So yeah, it was. And I know someone got chinned. A Celtic fan got chinned. I seen him with the black eye later. He was in the cop, and he jumped up, and he ended up getting chinned. But I held me. I kept myself quiet till the final whistle. But like under O'Neill, we thought anything was possible in Europe, because it was also there the night in the new camp when we knocked the great Barcelona out of Europe, and we thought, maybe we were on to a final, but we came up against Villarreal in the next round, and I suppose that was it. But even further on then, there has been, so many great nights. I suppose the one in Celtic Park on the 125th anniversary when the Green Brigade done the display, which the club were happy to use in pictures, even though they didn't give them credit for it. But that was a special night, and probably, a memory that will stay fresh in everyone's mind.
Again, I didn't get over that night. I was actually up in Donegal with my daughter. Me and my grandkids watched it. I think I was doing final exams or something, and the masters or something. I went back to college, and but my funny enough, my grandson Oisin, who we lost in later years, he lost interest in football, and yet every photo you see of him when he was a kid, he's got a Celtic top on, and but my granddaughter, who was only oh God, what age was she? and so when we scored the 2 goals, of course, I let a roar out of me, And ever since that, I think, she's the only one of them. And every time you see her, she's in Sligo 18 now. She'll have a Celtic top on, She's 20 now, But it's sort of converted her, And just going back a second to Villarreal, I was over at the home game, and again, like the previous year, this year, you actually felt super confident that we would get to the final after beating Barcelona. And but this year UEFA had a different, I think it was first come, first served. I know the 2 years was a different method of distributing the tickets. And I popped off the email, and didn't I get 2 tickets for Gothenburg for the final? And confident that we'd get to the final, and of course we didn't. And I think Newcastle were in the semi-final, and I contacted a radio station in Tyneside and told them, there was 2 tickets if they wanted to raffle them or something, And but they ended up they didn't have they still have the tickets somewhere in a box, But and alas, no more finals since,
No, but Paddy, you've been. I suppose the article is an excellent article because it's wrote from a personal point of view, but you also delve into the history of Celtic in Europe before you started to go to see Celtic in Europe. So can you just take us back and give the listeners and the viewers maybe a little insight into those early years when Celtic, when European competition started and Celtic started their journey?
Yeah, it was about, I didn't go over until Benfica in November 69. So, Celtic made their first, dipped their feet into Europe in 64. So it was 5 years earlier. And they played Valencia, apparently in the first game, lost 6-4 in aggregate. And the following year, or 63, and then 64, they got to the semi-final. Amazingly, because, it was, we were in terrible shape at the time and had lost 3-0 to the cup final, obviously. And, they played MTK Budapest in the semi-final, won 3-0 at Parkhead. And, you would take it for granted they were in the final. And, of course, like going to Real Betis last week or so, they went away and shipped 4 goals and were out, But they were dipping their feet. They were when they won the cup in 65, which started the whole Jock Stein thing, and the following year they got to the semi-final again against Liverpool. And I'm sure everybody, has seen these clips and but a disallowed goal in the last minute, which would have equalised and put us through. That knocked us out, a perfectly legit goal from Lennox. And it caused a bit of, and thankfully over the years, there's never been as much aggro from the Celtic end anywhere they go in Europe, a bit like the Irish fans, but because when that goal was disallowed, there was problems at Anfield that night, but never really repeated, I don't need to tell anybody, of course, then in 67, it's ingrained in all our minds, and the run to the final, whatever materialized, where it's fate or whether you believe in the magic of Jock Stein or it was our time, whatever. But going to the final, probably could have lost in the quarterfinal with Vovagina. Won the first leg of the semi-final against CSKA, easy enough. And then a 0-0 and of course winning in Lisbon, which needs doesn't need me to tell any age of Celtic fan, it was fantastic. I still hadn't evolved into a real Celtic supporter at that stage, I suppose, you know. Like I've told you before, and in Belfast, and we'd spent a few years, you know, a friend bringing us over to Glentoran, which was interesting, you know. So we really hadn't, and it was only then meeting cousins from Clydebank and Donegal, and their dads and my uncles, and they were telling me about, you know, obviously we knew about Celtic, and we actually marched down the falls with tricolours. There was a massive parade after the one, and the famous Jerry Fitt, you know, Jerry Fitt is a Brit, you know, he was up speaking, you know, and he clenched fist and he says, "We done it," you know, playing to the audience, you know. But he, you know, so then, I mean, they were telling me about, you know, and I just started to get the interest then, maybe in '68 after Lisbon, and then, you know, we went to Dublin to see against Rovers in early '69, and then Benfica that November, you know. I mean, my first year, I have no doubt I can say that it was my best year ever in 50 years as a Celtic supporter, except the finale. But, I mean, I went over against Benfica, 75,000. It was only in 2 minutes. Gamble scored from 30 yards. Willie Wallace and then Harry Hood made it 3-0. We thought we were through. Out in Lisbon, we'd know it wasn't on TV. You know, we didn't know the result to the morning, but famously they could beat 3-0, and the ref tossed the coin twice, and it hit his boot and rolled along and landed on heads that Caesar had called, and they were through. And the next game in March, the quarter-final against Fiorentina, and I went over and an uncle brought me, and again 3-0, you know, and I mean, you know, we weren't feared of anybody, you know, it was incredible. And then, I mean, the best night of my life, like at Hampden against Leeds in the 136,500. And I mean, I just knew that night, I was only 15, but I didn't think no matter what football game I ever went to. Now, watching Donegal win in Croke Park is nearly up there with anything, but you know, that night at Hampden and Bremner, we were behind the nets where Bremner scored, and then the second half and Big Yogi and Murdoch, my favourite, you know, and I mean the stadium was just, I mean, 136,000. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You know, it was just crescendo of noise coming down the terraces, and you know, and of course, you know, typically, like I suppose they do in Ireland, the same as they do in Scotland and England. You know, there are these notions. You know, we'd never heard of Feyenoord, so we probably thought they were no good. And you know, that's the way. That seems to be the nature. It's like when the Republic play games against somebody and they think, oh, this is easy, and they get a draw. They don't realise. And Feyenoord were good, and we were just unlucky. We held out to the last couple of minutes. You know, if it had went to replay, we couldn't have played as bad again, and would probably won. But Feyenoord won, you know, and I actually went to see them after the Ibrox disaster. I went over to Hampden. And Celtic played Feyenoord in a match, and it was the first time we'd seen what came to be known as total football, you know. And I remember watching Wim van Hanegem and throwing the ball up, you know. I mean, we're used to John Fallon or whoever, Simpson, booting the ball up the field. They were throwing it to the right back and pushing it over to the left back, and it was just beautiful football, you know. In 71, we got to the quarter-final again against Ajax. Again, they took over the mantle from Feyenoord. The Dutch teams won 4 in a row. And I tried myself and Mickey Kearney, who unfortunately was shot dead during the conflict. We thumbed a lift down. We hadn't much money, and we thumbed a lift down to Larne. And we're in the back of a lorry, so we got down anyway, and weren't the boats cancelled. So we couldn't get over, you know, and but they won 1-0, but they lost. They were well enough beat out in Amsterdam, as everybody was. It was no disgrace for the next 3 years,
Paddy, I know from speaking to you before and from all you write about for the fanzine, you have a love of football, not just Celtic. You have a love of football, and the way you described the Dutch game there, it was just beautiful. I've an image in my head now of you watching this as a young man, but the 70s took travel away from you, Paddy. You got involved in the conflict in the 6 counties, and you were imprisoned in Long Kesh. So were you still able to, maybe listen to a game on the radio, or were you getting your results and, write-ups and that through the mainstream media? Because obviously that was a part before, that was early, we'll say, in the conflict in the north. So had you got, even as a prisoner, had you got access to, get that little fix of Celtic, even though you weren't able to go?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was interned, in 72 when they got to the semi-final against Inter, and Inter took revenge. And Dixie Deans blasted the ball over the roof of the Celtic end, and the poor guy scored 93 goals for Celtic, and he always said nobody ever remembered anything, only the bloody penalty he missed, But we watched it, and we watched it in the cages. One of the few games, what it's like in Ireland, or the way it was in Ireland back in the 70s and 80s, the only thing you seen was English football. And it was just because it was European semi, they showed the Celtic game. You wouldn't see any Celtic games at home. Or on the radio. My wee mate who's dead, my wee Pat McGrattan, it was from Partick. He used to be able to pick up Radio Clyde, I think, on his car radio. You'd see him on a Saturday afternoon, and he'd be sitting out in the freezing cold with his cup of coffee in the car, and he'd be listening on Radio Clyde or something. But, them years, there was just absolutely no coverage. We were back in the cages in 74 when we got to the semi-final for the final time in Atletico Madrid, and the fiasco that was. They finished with 8 errors and had the other 3 sent off and the other 8 booked, I think. And a battle in the tunnel, and quiet man like Davy Hay apparently punched the head of one of the Madrid players, going up the tunnel, but we lost, and that was really the end of our. That was really the end of our great period in Europe, The 75, I think the last of the 9 in a row, I recall just on the radio in the cages, and they're giving a wee bit of the radio, but it was all English football, but I remember them talking about, I think it was at Easter Road, it was one, I'm not sure. Them years then, they were just, from 75 to 80, we played a mishmash of teams, that, wouldn't rock the boat anywhere, but we were gone, and just in 1980, I'd left the cages days behind, thank God, but I was to go to the Real Madrid game again. I'm not sure. I was a bit nervous still about going back north. I was in Donegal, but I remember going out. My uncle's at a wee pub, and I going out after football training or something. And my aunt was over. She lived in the Isle of Bute, and she wouldn't know much for football, but she says they did it. And the result that came through, they beat Madrid 2-0, which was probably the last it really was the last hurrah, you know. It was, you know, I mean, there was, I think, 120,000, 80,000 at Parkhead, and I think 120,000 in the Barnaboo, and, you know, and it was the last hurrah, really, in Europe, you know. I mean, the rest of the 80s, I mean, God, it was so disheartening. I mean, it won, there was a few leagues, a few cups, 85, the centenary. But every year in Europe, you were getting beat by a team, like really top class teams, like I can't even pronounce their names, Temasura or something. Sounds like a dessert, you know, in a posh restaurant. You know, Wisla Krakow, was it? Ziku, I can't even remember. I have the name somewhere there, but you know, every year there was a few great. The first game I went back to was Real Sociedad in '82, and they went over with two friends who are both dead now, Tony and Pat. And after the match, Tony brought us to our first Indian restaurant down in the Argyle Street or somewhere, and we never had an Indian in our life. So he had lived in Glasgow a while, and he ordered anyway, and this thing came out anyway, looked like something the dog left. It wasn't. I mean, I love Indian food now, but that was our first. That's my memory of after getting beat by Sociedad was the Indian meal. And then but we played you. We had some results. We always could get one result. You know, we played Juve, Liam Brady. I mean, the crowd adored Liam Brady when he was the Celtic crowd. You know, when he was playing, took a bow when he was playing for Juve, and we beat them 1-0 at home. But of course, they beat us away. And one of the unfortunate nights, the Notts Forest game, and I mean, we played them off the field in the City ground and should have beat them 3-0. And I remember Cloughie and all coming out, the crowd, the Celtic game was mobbed, you know, twice as many as it should have been, and came onto the pitch. The TV people thought it was trouble at first. Then they got word it wasn't. It was just overcrowding. Cloughie came round, and I remember the TV guy saying he's not wearing the most appropriate dress. Cloughie had a green top on him, you know, and he came over to the crowd, and the crowd, you know, sorry, there was no trouble or anything, but I mean, we went back to Glasgow, and again, the Celtic way, you know, Forest played them, beat them 2-1 easy in Glasgow, you know.
Yeah, I remember. That's probably my first memory, Paddy. Paddy, that's probably my first memory of watching Celtic. Is that Forest game?
Not Forest.
It was on. People will remember a great program on a Wednesday night on the BBC. It was called Sports Night, and they used to have boxing and football, and that would have been probably my earliest memory of watching Celtic, because it would be a couple of years before I would go to see them.
Yeah. I mean, that night, I still have that in a WHL. Obviously, I haven't got a video period, but they're there somewhere. But it was a brilliant performance in the City ground, you know. And I'm not sure it was Martin O'Neill playing. He might have been gone at that stage. That was about 84, I think, was it? But it was results like that, like, you know, the first leg, the Juve game, Rapid Vienna, the disaster that was, and, you know, came back and fairly beat them 3-0, but, you know, some arseholes, you know, threw a bottle on, and your man lay down. He was yards away from it, but they appealed. I remember, I couldn't believe it when they go to Old Trafford to play a third game, and we didn't turn up, you know, and the supporters turned up and Jesus, maybe 40,000. It was incredible, but the team didn't turn up, you know. You know, where are we? 85, 6. Trying to think. You know, there wasn't really, coming into the centenary year, there wasn't much to celebrate. You know, and we had that fantastic year, you know, but not much in Europe. I'm just trying to if I can. I'm just sorry. I just have some wee notes here, but just before, some of them famous teams that I was saying that we could beat every year. It's embarrassing to even mention Olympiacos, Wilsa Krakow, SC Ziku, Innsbruck, Timisoara, Neuchâtel, Zurich, Bordeaux. All right, Croatia, Zagreb, Hamburg, Rapid Vienna were decent enough teams, but I can't remember Argentina following year, maybe Borussia Dortmund, you might remember it, I'm not sure. But I mean, we weren't going nowhere, and then, it was just so. I mean, honestly, when I was younger, after getting beaten in Europe, it took me about 3 days to get over it.
I can hear the frustration, not frustration, maybe sadness in your voice about those barren years.
But it was just this is September. Like this is September or October, and you're gone out of Europe in the first round or the second round maybe, and that's it to the following year. And this was every year. And I mean, I just remember for a few days afterwards, I thought, oh, this is terrible.
Yeah, Paddy, and I know how much you love European football because you had that baptism of success, I suppose, when you started to go in the late 60s. But, Celtic's European history is good. There's been barren years, but the gap now has never been as big in Europe between the top European teams playing in the top leagues, many of them backed by billions and billions of pounds, and some backed by royal families from, the riches of the Middle East. So, we don't really, although we dream, of being back in the European final, nothing is impossible, and we should dream, and we should be wanting our team to get to the final. But with the financial difference now, it's like they talk about a super league. They have a super league because these teams are super rich, and no one can compete with them. So, there will be. I think Porto was the last team to win the European Cup that you could say were not part of that elite group or not part of them elite leagues. But Paddy, I don't see much hope for any of us outside these clubs.
Sandy, it's unfortunate, but it's probably reality. And I'm not sure. I mean, we had 8 seasons in the Champions League from 2001. Last 16 under Gord Streck. Neil Lennon, who a wee guy I love, and for everything he went through, and I think the abuse he got from so-called Celtic fans was ridiculous. I mean, whatever we think about Neil Lennon, we never got beat 7-0 by Barcelona the way Brendan Rodgers did, or 12-1 by Paris Saint-Germain like Brendan Rodgers did. As a top-class coach who could be the next man. That's
over 2 games.
Yeah, over 2 games. But I mean, it's lucky we were in the group stages because it wasn't counted like that. But to lose 12 goals, I mean, whereas Neil Lennon could beat Barcelona on our 125th. I mean, whatever happened, I mean, how we went, we were able to compete. We were always going to be group stages, and maybe the last 16. I would be perfectly, at the moment, it'll be a dream, But I mean, if you're winning leagues and played in the group stages every year, and like Porto, who have more or less a business plan, very like we have, and they buy the players for $500,000 from Latin America and they sell them to every club in Europe. Top club nearly has an ex-Porto player, and they bring in the 20 men. We have more or less the same business plan, but Porto will get into the group stages every year without doubt, and probably the last 16. Whatever happened to us in the years after, the mid 2015 or whatever. I personally, now you can't put it down to one match, but you remember the night we played Juve at home, and I never criticize any players because nobody ever goes out to play bad, but we were expecting to beat Juve, and in the very first minute, Effie Ambrose let a ball go over his head or something, and they scored, and they beat us 3-0. And I don't think we've had a result in Europe since. I see a trajectory from that day on, that we went from being a regular Champions League team. And we might as well be honest and say now we're a league team. I think that's the reality, But whatever happened in them 5 years, I had an interesting discussion with Danny, a big friend of mine, Muller from Donegal, and he did a bit of work in the finance sector in London in the 80s and stuff, and he's very interested and very tuned in about what's happening with the Celtic board and the money situation and stuff, and we had an interesting talk there recently, and he's not convinced that. Dermot Desmond has money to compete with anybody, but I know myself he's not going to spend it in the Scottish League. It's just it's a non-runner, but Danny was of the opinion that the board were happy enough picking up league titles, an odd cup, that they didn't think the ambition was there to make us a Champions League team again,
No, the ambition is certainly not there, because we've seen the way the club has been run since probably Brendan Rodgers done his midnight flip. We've definitely been on a downward spiral, and probably our success has papered over the cracks, maybe, and when it's now, the club is now in a bit of a mess, Paddy. But anyway, Paddy, I'm not going to hark on about, because we done a podcast with Matt McGlone about the current woes at the club and the current season. But if you just brought back some memories now when you mentioned some of the Strachan years, because the Nakamura free kick against Man United will live long in my memory. And indeed, a performance by a young Darren O'Dea in the San Siro when it took Kaka extra time to break our hearts. So I do believe that Gordon Strachan was able to punch above his weight with that team he had.
Yeah, I was over that night as well. I was ensconced in the top of that north stand. In the days before I had some health problems, there's no way I could get up, climb up them steps. But when Nakamura scored, it was probably, could compare it to the night of the Leeds game. It was just, not being xenophobic or anything, but beating some of the English elite, there's something nice about it, and it gives you that extra. I remember walking down the Gallagate, and I think it was raining, and cars passing, people walking, and everybody was singing "So Japanesey." I can remember, and we went up to the Thistle Hotel, and I think the whole of Donegal was there. And I remember, just everybody was there. And Jimmy McDaid, the TD government minister, was there, and Martin McHugh won the All Ireland with Donegal. Everybody was there, seemed to be there that night, and there was a party to the morning, it was just, it was one of them great nights,
Yeah, we qualified with a game in hand, and I remember myself and a friend of mine, Brian Cunningham, we went to Copenhagen thinking we were going to get a famous away win, but we didn't. And it was a great, how we went, it was a great display. Did Kaka score, was it in the last couple of minutes of extra time or something? In Milan.
in Milan.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I mean, how we could go from them displays. I mean, the only I haven't been to many away games in Europe, but I was at Seville, albeit just the up the stairs afterwards. But I mean, I've been in the Camp Nou 3 or 4 times. I've been in the San Siro, they're two paradise. They're two shrines to football. And how we could go. I mean, now this is only my own personal opinion. I blame Brendan Rodgers, not the board, because we never got defeats. We never got defeats in our European history like we did under Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, Brendan has a philosophy in football, and we can talk about that, Paddy. But at the same time,
but I mean, we can't.
Sorry, Paddy. I'm going to have to stop you there, right? Because you can't compare the teams now. Like the Brendan Rodgers, he had a philosophy in football, Paddy, right? And he believed in that, right? And it wasn't successful, right? But you can't say that domestically Brendan Rodgers wasn't a good manager. Brendan Rodgers brought professionalism to the club. And so, although I was in Paris that night, and for 8 minutes we were the best team in Europe when Dembele scored. But after that, then it was the other 82 minutes that we fell apart.
But I mean, you'd nearly think. I mean, I am expecting him to get either the job at the Camp Nou or at Old Trafford. I mean, he's that level of a manager. But I mean, to realise there's a certain way, and Neil Lennon knew how to play like that. Martin O'Neill how to play like that. Jim McGuinness knew how to play like that for Donegal, who were used to getting beat for 20 years until he came along. There's a certain way you play against the good teams, and it's not. You don't go out going
kamikaze.
You don't do that, and I mean to get beat and then results, and then I know we don't have the same caliber of players now. That the level of player has dropped. And but we, I believe since then, and we just became a Europa League team,
But even looking at the teams in the Europa League, Bayern Leverkusen are second in the Bundesliga. I know it's only out of 6 games, but you're going to be up against any of the elite leagues. Are going to have bigger squads, better players, more money. So, you need a bit of luck, and you need...
But honestly, Andy, I know, everything you're saying is right. But, I mean, we'll need to be very careful that we end up that we're not even a Europa League team. That we end up in this other Mickey Mouse competition they've brought out, I forget the name of it. There's a third European tournament. And we could very easily, the way we're going, we could end up, I mean, not... I just think, it's probably an unfair analogy. I'm just after seeing a friend sent the points scored or where they finished under par at the Ryder Cup. And I give the list of European...
not just golf again, Paddy. I'm sick listening to you about golf.
Bear with me a second. It gives the list of players, the 12 players. And they all finished, Larry was 6 under. This is their total score, 6 under, and Ram was 10 under. You know who finished at the bottom? Just it's not a scientific thing, but it's...
I'm confused now where this conversation is going, Paddy.
Well, Rory finished 2 under, the worst score. Like, Rory's score to me is comparing it to 7-0 against Barca and PSG. There's a way to play. The way to play that Shane Lowry played, not the way Rory played, even though he's a genius.
Right, Paddy, I'm going to leave you there with the golf because I've no interest in golf. I've no interest in the Ryder Cup. It's a waste of a good walk. I get invited to all these golf days out, and I never go because I've never held a golf stick in my life. Paddy,
Dermot Desmond's a big golfer.
Oh my God, Paddy! I'm going to start using foul language now, and you shouldn't even have your phone on because it's interfering with the interview. But I'll not hold that against you. The next time I get you into the studio. But Paddy, while I have you, you've wrote a book about your life. Can you tell us when we can expect to read the book? Because it seems to be that COVID has kind of knocked the book back to publishing day. So have we a publishing date? Have we a date that we can, go and buy this book, or maybe get you into the studio to chat about it? And then maybe you'll switch your phone off and people won't be texting you about bloody golf.
We're having a launch in the Felons Club in Belfast. We're having a launch in Letterkenny, and then down at my home place in Termon. And then a launch in Charlie Burns as the main bookshop in Galway and at the college. And a launch over in the Left Wing bookshop in the Calton. And maybe at one of your Celtic AM.
Hopefully,
mornings.
Paddy. Hopefully, we'll get you in for a chat.
If I mean the books. It's titled "Armed Struggle to Academia." It's from life in the 70s and conflict in Belfast, the years in the cages. It's about a lot of friends, up to 40, that were killed over the peace. A lot of friends who have died in recent years. And then, moving on and taking redundancy, going back to university in Galway, and then up a teacher man, and it's a story. It's a story of life, It's also as much my story. It's as much lots of people who I grew up and some survived and some didn't, and it's their story, and it's a story I think that needs to be told, and it's for them as much as myself putting it together, It's life, it's life.
Yeah, Paddy, I'm looking forward to reading it. Thanks very much for chatting to me today. Hopefully I'll see you in Glasgow on Thursday for another European match, and hopefully a famous victory. It's going to be a tough one, where the squad is very thin, bare. A lot of injuries, maybe, and not so much quality to come in when a player does get injured, which is disappointing for Ange, and disappointing for us as fans. But Paddy, listen, as I said, thanks very much for joining us, and folks, thanks for watching and listening. And if you would like to hear more about Paddy's story, he was a guest on the Celtic Soul podcast back in episode 20 and 21, and that's available on our podcast platforms and also on Celtic Fanzine TV. And it's not available on Celtic Fanzine TV. It's available on CelticFanzine.com. So, Paddy, just a final word to you.
Yeah, just I might see you about the Merchant City, maybe around 5. And if you wanted to earlier, we're heading down to St Andrews for 18 holes if you're interested.
Paddy, there's as much chance of me spending a day on a golf course as there is in an Orange Lodge. And I'll leave that final word to me then. Good luck, Paddy. Thanks very much.
Slán. Thanks.